Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Back to Suicide. I'm one
Hey,
of the hosts, right, with Kino Isaac. My name is Dr. Diane Kaufman, poet, artist, retired child psychiatrist, and founder director of the Hold On Campaign for Suicide Prevention. I'm so very pleased to welcome Gina Cavalier, nonfiction and fiction author, artist, spiritual teacher, and true survivor of suicidal thoughts, to our Talking Back to Suicide podcast. Transforming her pain into purpose, Gina is the founder of the Liberated Healer, where she's performed over 1,000 individual healings, helping people reconnect with themselves and their inner truth. Her experience as a media executive, having worked with some of the biggest names in entertainment, eventually led her to ask deeper questions. In walking away from that fast-paced world, Gina rediscovered and embraced her true calling, using creativity as a force for healing by empowering others through storytelling, energetic healing, and inspired creativity. As Gina expresses so beautifully, and these are her words, art has the profound ability to save a life, not only for the artist who creates it, but also for those who find solace and connection in the emotions that are being evoked through the creative process. This is no small feat, as it speaks to the depth of the human experience and the transformative power that artistic expression can hold. So, thank you, Gina, for joining us today.
Thank you. I got chills as you were reading that.
two of you have so much in common. Listening to that quote, you and Dan have so much in common.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so eager to hear about your life journey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again, Kino, and always a pleasure seeing what you guys are up to and all your posts and how you're trying to bring the tribe together, and so we can continue these conversations that can be difficult, and then also bringing levity towards it. As you will see in the way that I communicate my experience and the people I've worked with, we tend to agree that it seems like it is a heavy subject, but we bring levity towards it, and sometimes even laughter, and it just helps to show us that we're all human, and that nobody is exempt from these types of emotions and feelings, and it helps us bring us together in community, which community is so important to me, and that's sort of a big mission of mine, and so I appreciate you guys as well.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, go on, Kino.
No, I was just going to say we appreciate you too as well.
So, Gina, I understand that you have written a book about suicidal thoughts. Could you talk about what led you to write that book and also what the book shares?
Sure, I'm just going to show you the cover. It's Surviving Suicidal Ideation. I also co-authored it with a trauma-informed therapist, Dr. Amelia Kelly. I was a woman who I felt actually overcame suicidal ideation, and I just wanted to share it with the world. And it's almost like when you fall in love, you want everybody to be in love. And I had that feeling like, oh my gosh, you can actually heal this, at least a good amount of it, if you really work on it and make it a plan and a goal, and you have support, that you can actually get rid of, like, the mind is so powerful. You put it in your own hands with a lot of your own control, with help from others such as yourselves, to really get rid of those things that take you down and put you in dangerous situations. So I just wanted to share it with the world. And I did ask Dr. Amelia Kelly. She was on a podcast I used to have, and I asked her to write it with me. And I asked her to write it with me because I just didn't believe that somebody would believe just some girl who, doesn't have credentials and hasn't been an author before. So I just wanted to make sure, like, I'm a team builder, and I was like, if some people might need to hear the medical discussions about this, and how and also my story, so we kind of combined it, which was a little bit difficult to work out how the writing would roll out. But the Swedenborg Foundation, the publisher, was championing this whole idea, and we did a beautiful book that's almost like a workbook, and I'm really proud of it. Yeah.
So you yourself experienced suicidality, yeah, in terms of those thoughts, or want to share a bit about how young you were or events in
Yeah.
your life and what interventions you might have received?
Yeah, so the first thought of suicide I thought of was really young at age 8, because I did live in an abusive household in a chaotic world. And when I think when you're really young and you're just so, or sort of like this brand new creative energy and being, you don't understand when your life doesn't look like your neighbors, or you don't understand when there's all this chaos. And for me, I felt like I was like, didn't belong here. And it was more of like that. It was a, hey, I think there's a mistake. I don't belong here. This doesn't feel right. I'm not happy. I feel disconnected. I feel alone. I feel scared. I feel fearful. And I didn't know what else, so I had these thoughts of just going. I just wanted to go. And then the thing is, I never really got help with that. And it's not, I explain to people in my experience that suicidal ideation isn't something that is like a normal depression or bipolar disorder or other mental health issues. It's something that you might not have all year long, but you might have an event that all of a sudden takes you to that edge where you want to go and you start to plan. So it is completely different. It needs to be talked about differently. It needs to be addressed differently. And so, are you going to tell somebody about an event you had once or twice a year that's so taboo and so risque and might affect your friends and how they look at you, and your job and how they look at you? No, you're not going to. So that's the stigma that's attached to it, and why people don't share that they need help in most parts. So I would live my happy life. I had the same personality I had back then, so I'm just a very outgoing person, and I love people and I love experiences. So this was my normal life. But when chaos would come, or when I just was feeling a little disconnected, I would go home, or I would be sitting across the table at dinner and just thinking about going home and leaving the planet with this same smile on my face. So it's I finally, in my 30s and a little bit in my 40s, said, I'm really tired of feeling this way. Either do it and get it over with, or let's heal it. And I really made it to goal. And I almost like took it on, like, I'm going to produce this, or I'm going to be an Olympian of like my own self, like I think about being a winner, like being an Olympian might do, where you're actually really like, I can do this, like we can get through this. And I got to a point where even when chaotic things were coming, I would try to even think of hurting myself, and I couldn't, and it would just go away. And I would hear an internal monologue that said, that's not you anymore. And I was like, whoa, wow, I can't, I still really can't. I start to giggle. I'm like, that's ridiculous. You're not that's not you anymore. And so I was like, oh my goodness, I want to share this with people, that I've kind of reprogrammed myself through many different modalities. Meditation. For me, it was going into my spirit and recognizing how limitless that was. I didn't do therapy. I did therapy, but I didn't tell my therapist about my suicidal ideation. So, but I did have some therapy.
Hey, could you say more about that? What what were the reasons or the obstacles or your fears about sharing that with your therapist?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I did a trailer. We're trying to raise money for a documentary, and he was in my trailer. And he said, Gina never told me that she had suicidal ideation. And again, it was going back to that thing that this is something that I don't always experience. So you can have low level depression. You're sad about a breakup. How do I get over someone? Or how do I transform this relationship that's hurting me? And you want to, you're in your head about the story that's going on that you need help with your therapist. So you kind of go in saying, oh, I'm going to talk to my therapist about how I can get my boyfriend back or whatever it is. And you don't really want to focus on these really deep, dark thoughts. Plus, they might not come back for another 2 months or 3 months or again. So you have this dramatic fear of telling them. Plus, you really have this imagination that they're going to, call 5150 and lock you up. It's just really there. You're so afraid they're just going to all of a sudden put you on this label as crazy or in another category that you're a label you're never going to be able to take off, and that you're going to have to, be known as that, and then they're going to send you away. And they have had stories that where people have called, got certain help, and like an ambulance shows up at their door, and now their neighbors know or something, and their parents know, and they didn't want anybody to know. So there is a lot of just fear about that.
So how do we're going to go back, of course, to your continued story, but I want to interject. So how do we address that fear? Because, for example, there's the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline number, and there's that's part of what public health efforts to help stem the tide of suicide, which would be calling 988, letting people know that one is having suicidal thoughts.
I believe that 988, if you say a certain couple things, there's some certain, if you make it sound like it's happening, that there is protocol there, they do have to call the authorities. I'm not sure about that, but that's sort of what I've been told by other people, and that is still a fear. So we have to have other programs, and we have to talk about it like this, where we're having an open conversation about it. Somebody out there might be saying, oh my gosh, this is what I'm feeling. I need to hear this from someone else. We need to hear from more people who are working through it in a positive way. We need to have more support. It's not just a phone number. I had an idea for Suicidal Ideation Anonymous, and I actually wanted to connect with AA, and they have Overeaters Anonymous. They have all this kind of thing. We should have Suicidal Ideation Anonymous, and over these Zoom calls, you don't even have to put your name. You don't have to put your camera on. You could just be, black screen, and you could just hear somebody like myself saying, "Hey, I've healed that. I believe I've healed that, and even though I still continue, and here's what I did, and here's my story," and you start to feel that you're not alone. And the reason why I know this is important, because I had an event to raise money for my documentary, and I had a artist there, and a really wealthy, he owns a bunch of dispensaries in California, and they're really well known and very, you would consider wealthy. He came with a supermodel, all the clothes that you'd ever want, and we were raising money, and the two friends came, and they both didn't know that they were suffering from suicidal thoughts. Often these men, and men typically don't talk about it as much. So they kind of looked at each other and were like, dude, I feel like that sometimes. And when I was doing my speech, and the other guy goes, dude, I feel like that sometimes. And so they didn't know. And when what happened is they kind of decided to sponsor each other. So every time, like, they're having a bad day and they're having that thought, they call each other. And they're kind of artists and they're creative. So they made it a little macabre. To be honest, they were like, so how are you going to do it today? And the guy's like, I'm going to do this. And the other guy, and they did what worked for them. And they just started laughing, and they laughed it off. And the emotion changed like that. The emotion changed. It was gone, because you had someone who could just say, come on, I love you. You got this. We got this. I'm here for you. Instead of going down that whole barrel of thinking and contemplating and imagining, and now making you more disconnected and isolated from the people that are going to help pull you out of it. So that sponsorship really made me feel like we need to be able to almost have sponsors like AA in a way. I don't know the answer for that, but I think, what happens is suicidal programs go up and down, and it depends on, if a celebrity or someone famous passes away that way, then it gets heightened and people want to put money towards it, and then all of a sudden nobody wants to put money towards it, and then somebody like Anthony Bourdain or someone, and I don't want anybody to go that way, but so we need that heightened desire to help our humanity, which is also a worldwide crisis.
Yes, yes, it is.
This is
Mhm.
there's not it. The only thing we ever experienced simultaneously together was COVID. The second thing is suicide. That's it. No, we all, every country, every faction, every single age group is affected by this. So this is worldwide. So why don't we have a program like that? And that's a simple thought I had. So I just think that we need to, as a culture and as a community, decide where we want to put our money. If you were to look at the roster of money spent on different line items, suicidality and helping people like through mental health issues should just be at the top of our list as a community. And we would be a much better world if we start doing that.
I was just at a dinner last night where part of the conversation was on mental health, and the topic also, someone raised the question or made the statement like, where are the big funders? Are people donating to mental health, right? And if not, why not, right? In the United States, suicide is the 11th leading cause of death per most recent statistics, and second leading cause of death, I'll underscore that, number 2, second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 34.
I know. It's 1 in every 11 minutes. So as we've gone through this whole episode, X amount of lovely souls who just needed a helping, loving hand exit that way. And it's a traumatic way to exit that choice. And, it's hurtful. I was driving the other day, and I heard that there was a suicide in the hotel by me, and you saw all the police and everything. And I just driving by, I sunk. Just that thought, I don't know this person, whoever that was, what was going on at that moment. And, if we, I don't know, we just have to, I'd love to see us pull away from some of the things that you read online. When I look at the news, I just get like so gobsmacked in a way, because I'm like, I don't really care about X wearing what or not wearing what or how big this is, or I understand that there's a fashion section or entertainment sections, fine, but actually in America it feels like it's all about entertainment and fashion and who's not wearing clothes or something. And it's just I get so I don't even watch most of the news anymore, as much as possible, because it's so vapid, and that's, and it's like as a culture we need to change it, as every person, don't buying into that stuff, pull yourself away and get richer and work with the community a little bit more and things like that.
There was an article, an opinion piece in the New York Times this week, and it was a mother sharing about the death by suicide of her daughter. And it had to do with the daughter's, which they later found out, her conversations on Chat GPT, where she was expressing to AI her distress, despair, suicidality. And in this instance, according to the article and what the mom reported, that AI was giving her good advice of how to distress and talk to somebody about her problems and reach out for therapy, and was, in a sense, telling her she was in therapy. She had not told her doctor or the therapist about the suicidality. Eventually, she did share with her parents about it, and I think she also might have told the therapist, but also minimized it. She continued internally, apparently, to have suicidal thoughts. And this is so tragic. The last GPT conversation she had was Chat GPT helping her to write the suicide note.
I learned about this yesterday, and that is just.
And in the piece by the mother referred to herself as a, quote, former mother. And I was reading, so many of the comments, and I also sent in a comment myself for their consideration for it to be public about the idea of her motherhood, right? That in a sense that she's forever and always a mother, and her daughter is forever and always her daughter, and now she's grieving the death of her daughter. Right. And that the love of a mother for her daughter and the love that a daughter has for their mother may not save someone from suicidal thoughts.
Well, there was an animal activist that I can't.
I know, share about it, but I know whom you're talking about.
She took care of foxes, and she was getting abused online. And that's that, her husband, and they had a daughter. So it was an online bullying that was happening with her. And so her name is Michaela Rains. She's a founder of Minnesota Save a Fox Rescue. Just the most beautiful being you've ever seen in your life. And the online bullying and the hate that she got was saving, animals, her passion. I honestly believe, I don't know how we could do this, but there needs to be some consequences for bullying online. It's the lowest form of, communication, and it's just, I don't know what the future holds with that. And because that's so hard to navigate, and, people, you don't want to violate people's rights, but there's got to be, some kind of, if you participate in something that contributes to a death, I don't know what the answer is there, but that, I refrain from saying any negative comments, even in anything that I say, even to someone saying terrible things. Like, I'm an animal activist as well. And people might want to comment on something. And long time ago, I would reply, I can't believe you would say that, I don't even do that anymore. I just don't engage whatsoever. Even if, we have to, it would be great as a collective if we just can learn and understand that what we give out, we get back, that, that we are entitled to our own being 100% and how we feel and want to live our lives. But to continue the conversation, you're never going to prove, it's this endless, you never prove a point. Nobody's mind is ever changed. I'm sorry, so how can we just understand that and just say, well, let them live their lives the way they want to live their lives, and then let it figure it out,
I'm going to look up, you raise a good point about online bullying. The idea also, are there legal consequences of a person engaging in that? I'm going to look that up, learn about that. I remember it was a number of years ago, there was a young woman who was convicted of a crime of actively encouraging the suicide of a young man who ultimately took his own life, and she was incarcerated for that.
Yeah.
And I think there may be more than one case where that has happened.
Yeah, she was actually texting him, so it wasn't online. It was a personal friend of hers that she was texting him. Yeah, but yeah, she did go to jail for that. So, I think that's actually an interesting story.
And then on the one side, there's the other person who's engaging in hateful behavior towards us, right? So we're being hated at. And then it also becomes part of the equation. How do we survive that? How do we not become so distraught related to other people's comments that we end up taking our own life?
I had to. I don't read any. I try not to read any comments. I was reading reviews of the book, and I had family members who I was no longer in contact with because we don't see things the same, and we moved away from each other. But my family members, before the book even came out, wrote negative reviews on my book and on the suicide book. And I said, I was like, really, this isn't just like, a novel or, some type of other situation. I'm really actively trying to help people who are suffering. And you want to stop someone from getting this book because you're mad at me about some family issue years ago. Like, to me, that's just low level, thinking. And we just need to elevate out of those small things, and just as a collective, it's just something that really gets to me. But you going back to where the funding goes, from what I can tell, there is a large amount of funding. If you look at what Biden approved and things like that, there's like all this money, but it's usually going to a couple people or a couple companies. One of them is 988. The people that run that, the name is escaping me right now, but they were an original mental health suicide prevention small firm, and they got most of the contracts. But I don't believe they're like dispersing it or creating enough with that money. And I always get a little bit like, where's all the money going? If you look into them, it's like they should have hundreds of different ideas. Like my idea for a Suicidal Ideation Anonymous, it's not miraculous. It's easy. It's smart. We can put our heads together and come up with more ideas. I wanted to do the documentary with PBS, but the PBS funding got pulled. I developed a 6-series documentary that we were going to break it up into different parts of the world as well, because it's differently culturally. South Korea, it has huge suicide rates. Russia, huge suicidal rates. Japan, huge. This is like what, and they do it for different reasons and different. Like Japan is really focused on debt because it's shameful in the community. Americans and the UK are really based on just not having enough money, or like not living up to a certain standard of life, or no love.
Also, the number of guns we have in the United States is very much implicated on suicidal deaths.
Well, isolation, I think, is such a big part of suicidality. People that are lonely and isolated. So loneliness is so all over the world, which to me is so sad. And it's things like that. So it's a contributor. But so where's the money going? I'm really interested in knowing about that. And because they should be doing a lot more programs with the money that I've seen that they've got. There's hardly any I want to do a documentary about it. How many documentaries are there out, like about murders and crime and ex-serial killers? How many? If you go to Netflix, you're going to just go, and there's just hundreds. How come I can't get? And I have a full documentary film crew from Ukraine that have done documentaries. I mean, I have a whole crew. We did a whole $30,000 trailer. I mean, we're very knowledgeable about filming. So it's not that. It's the subject matter. And we wanted to do it in a classy way where we break out into, not make it so doom and gloom, but, we can't get funding for that. So again, it's where as a collective do we want to put our money and support and thoughts. We have to all do it. We have to be, every one of us have to be a little bit working towards it. It's like, what? I don't need to comment on that today. You know what? If every human did that 5% more, we would, as a collective, jump like a million times. You know what I mean? So it sometimes is just the littlest tweaks that make a big difference. It's not like you have to change your whole life. Just the little tweaks or the little thoughts would make a big shift in the world, I believe. because they say something like if 5% of America decide, or this is what they said about America, if 5% of Americans decided X, like they weren't going to do this anymore, or like say not pay their taxes or something like that, there wouldn't be anything they could do about it. I mean, it's such a small number of what real influence could do when you just make little changes collectively.
Kino, what are your thoughts?
I gotta ask first, is there really a line for overeaters?
Oh, yeah,
Like,
like suicidal. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Overeater Anonymous, yes.
yeah, Overeaters Anonymous. Like, seriously.
Yeah,
Okay.
because well, weight. Overweight. There's a lot of overweight people
Yeah.
that are. It's an addiction. It's not just
Can we
being
see that
overweight.
as a form of depression? Addiction slash depression. I'm depressed, that's I'm overeating. Like those movies, Heartbreak, let me get the ice cream in the fridge, eat.
Yeah,
So it is
I
a
mean,
form of depression.
you can ask Diane, but it's a lot of it's trauma based, and it's either gambling, alcohol, drugs, overeating, over shopping. People can like just have this hole in their soul and feel disconnected, and so they just shop because they get that adrenaline rush. You know what I mean? So there's, I don't know, is there over shopping anonymous? I probably
Is that like
I probably
like I
could
see
join
it as
that
an
one.
alternative to committing to suicide. Okay, so I don't want to kill myself, so I'm rather going to eat a lot.
Yeah, think about those people though. I mean, they're suffering. I'm sure they have suicidal thoughts. That they get trapped in their body, and and they have an addiction. People
Yeah.
that don't have addictions it's hard to understand what being addicted feels like, I think.
Someone who doesn't take care of themselves, I feel, don't really care about themselves. And they're depressed. They just don't know that they are depressed. It's like if I refuse to exercise, even though I know I have the ability to exercise, I mean, I don't need to go to the gym if I can't afford it, but I can take a jog, I can run on the road, that's for free. So I feel people like that are unhappy with their life.
Well, I think
My
it all
opinion.
comes. It's such a, for me, in my experience, it comes down to self love. I mean, everybody's journey is different. I mean, whether I would have been overweight or wanting to I just didn't love myself, and I think it's in the same form of not loving yourself, and that's usually from some sort of trauma or neglect. They say
Yeah.
that, and the doctor, what I found is, neglect is a huge trauma for children, that especially I think from what I've read, people that do overeat is from like either severe neglect, as kids, trying to get attention or whatever, so it's all a form, it's all, painful and suffering. I just don't want to see people suffer. And
You took
it's
the words
all.
right out of my mouth there
Mhm.
because, you mentioned trauma and you mentioned kids. So if I'm 7 or 8 years old and I'm overweight and I get bullied at school because I'm overweight, subconsciously, those comments, those negative comments, that bullying is going to stay with me for the rest of my life unless I decide to actually sort it out. So I'm going to continue overeating for my entire life because of that comment that was made towards me when I was 8 years old. That trauma is still with me, and I haven't done anything to actually deal with it, or I don't get the support at home, and it stays with me continuously for the rest of my life. I'm just going to overeat, be overweight,
So
unresolved trauma.
I think our brains are doing exactly what they're supposed to do with their supercomputer, and they're like a filing system, and they can go back really easy into that past file and pull up any file it wants. And it just usually, because painful memories just stick a little more, you can easily go back to that. It's really hard to remember the good memories a little bit more. So whenever one of the practices I do when I go back to a painful memory, I try to go back to a happy memory and swap it out. And I'm kind of
Yeah.
reprogramming my brain, because and I actually drop down into my heart, and I start to feel my heart again and feel my physicality, and I do tapping on my body and things like that. And I get back into my heart space and just realizing like this is all wonderful. Oh my gosh, my hands work. Oh, I'm so lucky. Thank you for hands. I get so grateful for every little thing. And I don't let my mind take over. And then I say, thanks, mind. I know you're doing your job, but it's not helping me right now. It's like I don't need to go back into that old file cabinet all the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
you're doing a good job, but I don't need that right now. And then so I kind of started learning how to go more into my heart space. And that's why breathing practices come into place, and that's it's self-healing. And that's where you find your love, when you start to feel your own heartbeat again. When you're suicidal, this all goes numb. You can't feel your heart anymore. You build a protective barrier around you that's so numb that if somebody was to poke at you, you can't feel it. You become number and number and number. And because you're actually trying to force yourself to make a decision saying, hey, and you block everyone out. You become isolated. You start giving away your things because you don't care anymore. You start paying. I gave away my things. I started paying off people's bills. I sold my house. I gave away all my money because I didn't want the government to get all my equity in my house. Like, I was planning, and I was so disconnected from my spirit and from my heart and from all these living parts of me. The head is what was going like a machine. And I'm not mad at my mind or head. I just had to realize that I have to take control of the computer. I have control of the keyboard. I never said that before. That's
It's a
interesting.
good line. So, what listeners can take away from this is we all have some good memories within our life. So, when the
Yeah.
bad memories do pop up, replace it with the good memories. I'm going to mention meditation again on the show. At times when you're meditating and when something negative pops up or a bad memory pops up, I've replaced it with a good memory. Even if it's a girlfriend that I loved back in high school, I replace it with that memory, and it changes the whole dynamic of that meditation practice.
Yeah.
The mood automatically changes. So that's the lesson for listeners to take away from this. When you were talking about funding, you are so correct. The moment a celebrity passes away, there's this fund and that fund, and you can contribute towards suicide prevention, via these channels. It's so true. But an average Joe on the road passes away, nothing,
Mhm.
nothing. In communities as well. They don't come together and say, okay, guys, what can we do so we can prevent this from happening within our community again? We don't do that at
Mhm.
all. So
I mean,
communities
we don't
actually,
have we need to have centers, we can have statues, we can have lists, we can have Zoom calls, we can have apps. We have some apps. I developed an app widget where um, you can populate that widget with like things that would help you. It's a suicidal ideation widget, and inside that widget it has like files, and in those files are videos of your family. So you say, hey son, can you just do a video about how much you love me? And you keep them. And when you have that minute, that moment, and you're getting ready to do that, you pull up that thing and you pull up that video of your son saying, Daddy, I love you. Daddy, I love you. Mommy, I love you. You know, and that's how we care for ourselves. Put in those pictures of the good memories, the meditation techniques that work. Have like the people, the support list, and the go-tos and all that stuff, and you have it kind of housed in a little special widget and on your phone, or that's such a I'm not brilliant. Like, that's such a small thing to to create. But I can't just be the idea person. We need to have the community and the money behind it. And we know that there's people out there with the money already, and they're really just cycling through the systems they've already created. I know a lot of them are doing the best they can, but they're really not creating new things. I haven't seen anything new, exciting that I think, oh my gosh, that's going to save people
yeah,
for real.
and that's worldwide.
And there's
I mean,
so,
that's
and
worldwide.
like I just gave a bunch of ideas that could change, thousands of people's of lives. But
Yeah.
you know, It's not just a phone.
I'm thinking that there needs to be an analogy almost to we brush our teeth 2 or 3 times a day. And when we're little, right, and we have teeth, our parent is helping to brush our teeth. And then eventually we're brushing our teeth ourselves, because if we don't take care of our oral hygiene, our teeth, they're going to rot and fall out, and we're having cavities and gum surgery and the like. It's really that we need like a mental health self-care because I'll put it this way. Apart from a psychiatric illness, which may or may not relate also to the impact of trauma and other events, it could be that there's a genetic predisposition and the person develops bipolar disorder, starting when they're a teenager. But apart from those kind of circumstances, I think we all need to take care of our mental health in a daily way. And so you're practicing skills from a very young age, so that we develop a skill to be aware of, oh my goodness, my thoughts are going into a negative direction. What can I do to help myself? Who can I tell for support? And that it's not that it's developed into the crisis, because at the moment of the crisis, it's very unlikely that the person is reaching out for help when they've crossed a certain point. So yeah. I would agree with you, Gina, that new and creative ideas, especially preventive, intervented, early intervention, as part of just routine self-care, self-love, but I'm loving myself. I usually don't think of it this way, but I love myself when I'm brushing my teeth. Right? It's an act of love, right? And yeah. To practice mental health self-care, and to, in some way, although it's also about suicide prevention, it's even in a sense broader than that. It's that you're preventing, potentially for some people, ever reaching the point of having suicidal thoughts. But that goes way back into how we parent our children, how teachers interact with kids and other caregivers of young children, and also what we expect of ourselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, they need, why they should at least have a class in school once a year dedicated, or a day dedicated to talking a little bit about this in all schools. My brother was a counselor, and he told me that the youngest kid that came to him and said he was suicidal was around 6, and that he gets it all the time. And so if we know that this is what they're thinking and talking about to a potential counselor at school, and he said what was the hardest part about that situation is he would, go to talk to the parents, and they wouldn't believe him a lot of times because they didn't want to hear it. They were like, no, you must have misunderstood it. He said 90% of the time some parents would say, oh my gosh, like, we're going to work on this and get some help. But they would just kind of go, no, that's not our kid, And he's like, no, that's like, I've been a counselor for 30 years. This is what your kid told me. So he said the hardest part was dealing with the parents of that stuff. So we really need to still have things in schools. There should be at least a class once a semester about how to deal with bullying, how to deal with like mental health issues and stuff like that, just for all ages, all the way up to high school and colleges or whatever,
and the elderly, which is the highest rate, right, in terms of deaths by suicide.
Yeah. So there's just a lot.
How does a kid who's 6 years old, I mean, the youngest we've had on the show is 7. How does a kid who's 6 years old even know what suicide is? Do we blame the media for this? The TV? What we're consuming online?
I have to say, it's interesting because, when I was in a harder position in my life mentally with suicidality, and I would watch a TV show, and all of a sudden, like, I'm not even kidding you, they would market the movie like a rom-com, and then all of a sudden there'd be like this romantic thing and this really beautiful scene, and then all of a sudden they break up and the person kills themselves. Like, it's a rom-com. Like that is not what I was looking for. I would get triggered 100%. And I couldn't believe that there wasn't any kind of trigger warning on there for people that says. But the thing is that if you, they would have to put warnings on everything in the beginning. Like they say nudity, and they haven't upgraded that as well. Just it's just like, just tell me what we're going to see and I can make the choice to not watch it. Or I'm not telling people, because I come from the creative background. I worked at Warner Brothers, Disney, all that stuff. I'm a writer. I have a book I have a novel that's like a Harry Potter series I'm trying to sell. We have all kinds of storylines in there, light and dark and happiness and love and all that stuff, and people that have, gotten killed in the movies that I'm writing. That's storytelling. I don't want to change storytelling. I would really love to know up front kind of like the list of things that are in there so I can decide. Like, I'm not in that space right now to handle that. But I remember watching that movie because it was a loving relationship, and then in the movie the guy killed himself. Like, I was so sad. I had to turn it off, and like I was like depressed. I was sad the whole night. I cried. It hit me really hard, like in my heart, because I was in that space. So yeah, it's
interesting too, the narratives that are propagated in a way of, if you love someone so much and they're not with you, then the depth of my love equals I'm going to kill myself if they're not in my life anymore. That is a false narrative, but it's propagated in terms of romance.
100%. I say this all the time. The children are just mimicking the adults, regardless of any question. That's the easiest thing. 100%. If we were loving and kind to each other and dancing and like there was, they would mimic whatever we do. So if that is something that is in the child's environment, I'm sorry, somehow, whether it's friends and family or somewhere, but they mimic us, definitely, especially a young child. They will only mimic what they see on television, what they see on their games. They're shooting people. I believe that the mass shootings, America has incredible amount of mass shootings, but those people are suicidal before they become homicidal. I believe that 100%. They're suicidal, and then they think, hey, I'm going to take some people out with me, because they know that they're on a suicide mission when they do that. Mass shooters are on a suicide mission. They know that it's a better, almost 100% chance they're going to get shot and killed themselves. So they're on a suicide mission. So we need to capture these people before they become homicidal. This is 911, and this is why I get frustrated, because it's, that, like you said, like then all the money goes to all these other things. It's like, no, it's 911 where, it's mass shootings that are affected. If you add that to the level of suicidality, people who commit suicides and put mass shootings together, I mean, the numbers are, insane. So, yeah.
Before, because I want you to like elaborate on that. Back to what we were talking about now, about what kids are consuming on TV. We can't even say it's modern productions. We have to go back to ancient literature. We have to go back to Shakespeare. We have to go back to Romeo and Juliet. That's the starting point. What we're seeing on TV now has evolved. Suicide because of love. It goes way back to Shakespeare. Now we're seeing that, a modern version of it. So this is not something new.
Wasn't there a book, The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe, right? Which I have to admit, I didn't read that book. However, I understand that it caused an increase in suicide related to the storyline of the book.
Well, that's why I think it's...
And also 13 Reasons Why Not, recently,
the
Netflix series, right? Also about peer teenage interactions, and almost giving a justification for suicide. Like, of course the person would kill themselves if this happened to them, and which is not true, right? And also it caused an increase in suicide related to the series.
I watched that series while I was suicidal, and I did, it kind of glorified, it romanced it for me. It really did. It romanced it for me 100%. And I'm a creator. Honestly, I write and all that stuff, and I do scripts and stuff. So I don't want to tell other creatives what to do. So for me, because that's what they did. And I actually enjoyed watching it at the time, but I was depressed and it did romance it for me. If I might have left this planet during that show because of that, it might have, it might have enhanced that. So to me, the answer is not to 100%, like, we can't change creativity and we don't want to do that. But now we need to create more a balance. So let's have a documentary about, how to heal suicidal thoughts and things like that. Like, we need a balance. So we need more material that supports people. So if we're going to have like 1,000 movies or, things that they watch that are going to be that, we need at least a handful of there needs to be more of a balance, is what I'm saying. And that is a responsibility of the studios and the creative people. I do put it to them because they have the budgets. They have to take risks sometimes. Yeah. They're not, maybe aren't going to make a lot of money, but guess what? You might have saved one person. Wouldn't it be worth that budget at that TV show, to get save one person's life, that and it has to be like that. We have to be a community where we really care and say, okay, let's put out 1,000 murder movies. That's okay, but we're going to do this documentary as well.
These guys are not worried about saving lives. They only worried about bottom line. It's all about the money.
It's true.
This is what it is.
I mean,
we need to see the world for what it really is. That the world is built by design.
But
it's built by design.
I think creatives are. I mean, I've worked in the creative industry a long time, and the problem with there's a lot of creative people that want to do good, and they work so hard, like myself and a lot of my friends. But the people with the money, there's just no connection right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's the creative and the money people. Like, there needs to be a come together. The money people are only investing in old ideas, like old 80s and 90s TV shows. They're remaking everything, because the people with the money don't have, you're right, they only care about the bottom line, and they don't have the forethought, they don't have the vision. But the people with a vision, like me, I don't have the money. So we just have to figure out a way to bring us all together. That's why I say, as a community and a commonality, is saying, yeah, because what happens is that one group of people that have the money, what happens is someone in their family, decides to leave the world that way. Then all of a sudden they care. So why don't we do that before that has to happen? That's how.
It's like Obama.
It would be great to have a gathering called Creatives for Suicide Prevention.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a new goal for you, Diana.
We'll start it.
I believe in you. You can make it happen. But I'm thinking, I'm a producer. I'm thinking, if I'm a producer at Universal or Netflix, for example, and you come to me and you pitch to me this idea of, a documentary or a movie about suicide prevention, I'll be like, okay, I get where you're coming from, but I'm always going to look at, okay, how much is this going to make me, once it's released? And then I got someone else coming into the office, and I'm like, and he's like, I'm going to make this movie, action thriller, people are going to die. Then I'm going to be like, okay, that's going to make me a lot of money. So I go for that. But you're right, the people who really, or the creators that really want to do good work, just don't have the funding, as the guys who have a good idea.
Even if they had a fund that said, hey, we're going to have like 100% are going to be, here's 100% of the pie. 90% is going to be the shoot 'em up movies or the all that stuff. But we want to give back to our community, because we are the ones watching their things, right? So we are still their community. We're still their eyeballs. We're still their viewers. Like, there has to be a reciprocal, not just money. And go, you know what? We're going to dedicate 10% of our budget to community-based programming. That's it. You
Tina,
have to have
Yeah.
a little bit.
Tina, do you know of the organization called From the Heart Productions?
No.
You should look them up.
Okay, I will.
Okay, yeah. They fiscally sponsored the Hold On campaign, and they have funding for passion projects, right? Of enormous public interest, and I think that there may be a connection for you with them.
I'll look for them. Yeah, we have a fiscal sponsor, Creative Visions in Malibu. They're a great group. So, and we already have our trailer, and like I said, our Ukrainian film crew. I mean, we put together like a $30,000 trailer.
Yeah, and
We have
From
a
the
whole,
Heart is about film. It's about
Yeah.
films,
Yeah,
and
okay.
they have grants as well.
I'm gonna look out for them. Thank you. Yay!
Welcome. Yeah.
So what happens when they do, let's just say Gina approaches them and they approve to fund the project? What's the next steps after that to actually get it out to the world?
It just depends if it's a TV show or a feature film, or you have to. It just really depends. You can create like probably what we will do. We wanted to do like a 6-part series, but we probably won't get that kind of funding. We'll probably do like a 45-minute independent film, and then just go to the indie festivals and try to get it traction from it, and then have somebody buy it, and who knows. Yeah.
You see, we're always going to live in this world where it's going to be mainstream versus indie. So you can get the funding for your project, but it's always going to be you versus the system.
Yeah.
Sadly,
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then you need the budget for marketing as well. We don't have millions of dollars like the big guys do in order for you to get your message out there, whether it be a book, whether it be a song, whether it be a series, a movie, a documentary.
Yeah, I know Ashley Judd is involved in some stuff too. I was trying to get a hold of her. And we wanted her to be in our documentary as well. So, you really just need that one person who has been affected by this, who believes in you. That's really all we need. And I think that would be, somebody like her or something like that would be just a great partner. And they would be able to take us to where it needs to go. That's just the truth of it all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When you were on the Kino Isaac podcast, like we had a phenomenal, cool conversation. Like we touched on many, many topics. You 20 minutes in, you got really comfortable. You spoke about your life, about your struggles at the moment. So many people around the world, millions of people. I mean, I was on the phone with my mother today who said she went to visit one of her friends who just lost her job. So many of us, and my life included, when I decided to take 20 years back to start living life on my own terms, reach the top of that ladder. And moments later, can be years, months, they reach rock bottom. You even use that 2 words on my show, rock bottom. And you manage to still rebuild yourself and come out of that rubble. Like, do you want to touch on that? What can people actually do for themselves to say, okay, look, suicide is not the option. Being depressed is not the option. Let me rebuild myself. I've hit rock bottom. What's next for me?
Yeah, I mean, I've had to go through that whole like lose everything, go through bankruptcy, having to move, like not having any money, um, being set up in a comfortable situation, writing, doing the things that I love, to having to go back to like a 9 to 5 job, and starting over and living with friends and even all that kind of stuff. And at the moment when it's happening, it's very hard and scary, but I'm looking at everything as in like I'm in a school or something, and that I'm just here to learn lessons, and I'm taking it as lessons, and taking that experience with me. And if if you hold on to the belief that your life is falling apart, your life is going to fall apart. So it's working on changing my belief structures and myself and saying, and laughing through the hard times and saying, this is just another experience I get to have. Yeah, I crashed my car a couple days ago. I literally left out of my driveway. I didn't put it all the way in park. I went to get something out of the car. It went out of my driveway, almost ran me over, and blew through the gates and went across the street and hit a fire hydrant and caused it, like, the one thing I feel like I had, like, and it was just like, okay. And then it was weird. I didn't even get really too sad or depressed. I was like, I'm lucky I'm alive, because I almost fell under the car and got run over. And so I was like, it switched my perspective, because I was kind of in a down spiral that last couple days. And I went, oh my God, I'm alive. You can fix the car, insurance or whatever. And it was weird how it didn't affect me. And so I've just, through really consciously saying, like, whatever comes, I'm experiencing all these emotions. Like, I get to have emotions. I get to have them, and some of them are terrible. But tomorrow will be fun, or I still get to have the other good ones too. And just kind of embracing all of the emotions, because you can't have happiness without sadness, and you can't have joy without fear. And if you were to tell me I have to live my whole life fearless and, like, not be fearful ever again, that's a lie. That's not gonna happen. So it's like embracing every single emotion and being grateful that I get to have all these emotions, and looking at it as like a treasure chest instead of like a deep hole, and saying, oh, I get to experience anger today. I get to experience frustration. You know what? But I choose, actually, joy is a lot more fun. So I'm going to go to joy, back to joy, and try to get back there as much as possible. But we try to build our life up and reject or put resistance against those emotions, and they're never going to go away. So what we reject persists. So if we keep pushing it away, it's never going to go away. But that's when you go, like, well, why is this fear not going away? Why is this anxiety not going away? Because we're thinking about it too much. We're creating the resistance, so we can't be in joy. We have to accept it, that those emotions are going to be around us, and embrace them instead of pushing them away. And then you can start to dictate to live the life how you most prefer. Say, I'd rather be happy today. Am I going to let that thing that somebody at work say to me really bug me? It's your choice. And realizing that you have more choice than you believe of what you can. It's all your choice.
Yeah,
Somebody says something mean to me, I go,
100%.
okay, I don't have time for that right now. Or you can
I've
in and let it swirl around you, change your day, change how you talk to your friends, change your mood, let it affect you for a couple days, but that is your choice. And so
choice. Yeah,
people need help and support to help understand that they're making that choice. That's where the
I reach,
community part comes in.
yeah, I reached a point in life when people have hit rock bottom. I no longer feel sorry for you, because, as you said, you have a choice. I was talking to an old school friend of mine on last Saturday. So she sends me this message, and she's like, I was robbed. They held a gun to my head. They took me to the ATM. They made me withdraw all the money I had. I'm in this financial mess. I'm grateful that I still have a job. But the narrative is for these people is, don't you know anyone who will be willing to offer me a weekend job? And my advice to these people now is, look inside, like, what are you good at? So instead of me saying, okay, send your CV, let me send it to a few people I know, maybe, they got something for you over the weekends, I gave her a business idea. So they listen to what you have to say about the business idea, but they never do it. They just stick to the narrative. Oh no, let me just continue looking for a weekend job. Yet I've given you such a great idea that you can do, and all I'm telling her is you need a cheap, decent laptop, you need good network, and you can run with this. People are making money online. Use this, do it. I would, but I have a lot of other stuff going on, and I'm more focused on my passionate goals than doing things that's just going to make me money. but no response back from her after the idea was given. So I
Hmm.
don't feel for these people anymore, because if you are asking me for advice and I give you something to go with, where you can work for yourself and earn a little bit extra, actually you'll probably end up earning more down the line than you are with your job at the moment, but you just don't want to. I don't want to make the choice of working for myself or putting in a little bit of effort, getting myself the laptop, coming back from work from 6 to 9, focus on that business. I don't want to do it because I've gotten so comfortable. So I rather let people feel sorry for me and ask people for help and, oh, do you have a job for me? No, you
Yeah.
have a choice. Look inside. We're all unique. We're all special. We all got skills and talents. We just haven't utilized them yet, or actually found it yet, or spent the effort looking internally first. So why
That's
should I
I'm
feel so?
thinking, I'm thinking that, and this would not necessarily at all be your role to play, right? But there's that technique of motivational interviewing where a person needs step by step encouragement to become motivated to make the small steps that they can make, right?
yeah.
Mm,
And I also
yeah.
want to share the thought too that although I support and I agree with personal responsibility and making choices, right, for other people and also especially myself, but in the face of having a psychiatric illness like psychosis or a manic episode or a severe major depression, that element of choice can become so limited based on the severity of the physical mental health disease that the person is having.
Yeah.
So
True.
just want to say that because that can, and I know none of us are thinking this, but that perspective of choice can go into people saying to the person that is in extreme despair or mental distress, like, just snap out of it.
Yes, I did. Yeah,
Just snap out of it, right?
that's true.
Change your thinking. And in certain situations, that's virtually impossible to do.
True.
And that's why support services, practicing preventive mental health care, calling 988 becomes so important.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Gina, how can people learn more about you?
Gina Cavalier, GinaCavalier.com or theliberatedhealer.com is my kind of where I have all my meditations and teachings, and I'm on Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff. Yeah, and my books are on Amazon. They're worldwide. This book is Surviving Suicidal Ideation. It's everywhere on Amazon or even small mom and pop shops. And then I have a book coming out in January called Planet Walking, a handbook for the living. And it's a 6-week program for people with suicidal ideation, but it also is about just how to be on the planet, because as a child, I didn't know how to be here. I didn't understand that I was this, energetic being and things like that. And my parents never kind of explained that to me. And so I kind of made the book that I wanted as a kid. That was really simple to understand and things like that. So that's coming out in January through O Books. Yes, and that's already out for pre-order right now, all over Amazon, all across the world.
Gina, before you go, the
Yes.
last time we spoke, you mentioned to me therapy to spirituality. Can you briefly just explain that on this show? How,
Well,
like, spirituality has played such a big role in your life with
I
mental
don't think
illness?
it's I don't think it's 100% for everybody. That's why I don't talk about it a lot. But for me, spirituality, and it can interchange with energy. It could be energy. It's just knowing that I was just this energetic being, and that I'm more than just this physical property. This physicalness. That I always have energies supporting me, and to me it's like my guides or my support system. That I'm just, I have spirit, like I have a soul, I have a purpose. For me it's like I have a purpose to be here. I'm meant to be here. There's a reason why I'm here. And that really helped me kind of understand. It's like I belong here. And I think that's what and then I'm not alone. And I felt really alone for a long time. And I think not feeling alone really helped me. And so even when I'm alone now, I kind of know I'm not alone in a way with my gut. I feel this energy around me, the spirit, so it's just the lack of a better term, because I know some people don't like to focus on that, but it's really just my spirit and my soul. My soul has value. It's the most
And people need
valuable.
to ask themselves those questions. So
Yeah.
those questions that you ask yourself, they need to ask themselves also those questions. Why am I here? What's the point of my life?
I said this one, I'll leave with this one saying that I said about spirit, and I realized that my soul was the most valuable thing I owned.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Gina,
Lives
your
on.
spirit and soul has come shining through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All
Big hug,
right.
everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thanks, Gina.